If I could go back and hand my past self a list before the build started, this would be it. Not a list of things I wish I'd done before better. Those are everywhere. A list of the specific decision I made, complete confidence that turned out to be completely wrong. It cost me real money and real time to fix. And in two cases are still not fully resolved 3 years later. I'm telling you these not because the mistakes are unique to me, but because they're the exact mistake I see repeated by builders in tiny house communities constantly. People making the same confident wrong choices I made because the available advice was either incompetent, optimistic, or written by someone who built one tiny house on a favorable budget and a mile range. Here's what I do differently and why. Mistake number one: I under insulated the floor and paid for it every single winter. The floor insulation spec I used was R19, a standard recommendation I found repeated across multiple tiny house building resources and accepted without questioning. It met code minimums for conventional construction in my climate zone. It was completely inefficient for a structure sitting on a trailer 6 inches above open ground, with wind moving freely underneath it. The difference between floor insulation in a conventional home and floor insulation in a tiny house on a trailer is the exposure conditions. A conventional home floor sits above a conditioned or particularly conditioned crawl space or directly on a slab. That moderates temperature. A tiny house trailer floor sits above nothing. Open air, moving wind, ambient outdoor temperatures on all sides simultaneously. That exposure condition requires significantly more insulation than the standard recommendations account for. The real world consequences was a floor that felt cold to bare feet and temperatures above freezing required the heating system to work significantly harder to compensate and created a condensation problem at the floor to wall junction every winter that took me 18 months to correctly diagnose and address. The fix: retrofitting closed cell spray foam between the floor joists and from underneath. Was uncomfortable, time consuming, and cost $800 I hadn't budgeted for. And the correct spec for a tiny house on a trailer in any climate with meaningful winter is R30 minimum in the floor, achieved with closed cell spray foam rather than bats. Bats in a floor cavity that's exposed to wind movement lose effective R value as air moves through them. Spray foam, it seals and insulates simultaneously. Do it right during the build, and you never think about the floor again. Do it wrong, and the floor reminds you every single winter. Mistake number two: I built the loft too low to sit up in. This one appears on every tiny house mistake list ever written. I read those lists before I built. I looked at my dimensions and told myself my loft was going to be different. It wasn't different. I have 28 inches of clearance from the loft floor to the ceiling. I'm 5 foot, probably 11, 12, maybe 6 foot tall. I cannot sit up in my own bed. I have to roll to the edge and lower myself down every single morning like I'm disembarking from a submarine. Every person who stays over looks at the loft and looks at me and asks the same question. I give the same answer. The mistake wasn't the loft. The mistake was building the loft height around my standing headroom budget rather than my sleeping comfort. I was so focused on making the lower level feel generous that I compressed the loft to a dimension I rationalized as acceptable because I'd only be sleeping there. What I didn't account for is how often you do things in a loft besides sleep: reading, scrolling your phone, talking to someone, changing clothes, existing as a human being who occasionally wants to be upright. And the minimum loft clearance I would use now is 42 inches, enough to sit cross legged comfortably, enough to dress without gymnastics, enough to feel like a room rather than a storage compartment. If that means the ceiling is lower in the main living space, the trade is worth making. You spend more conscious hours in the loft than you think you will. Mistake number three: I chose style over function in the kitchen. My kitchen, it looked exactly like the tiny house kitchen I'd saved to have folded over 18th months of planning. Open shelving, a farmhouse sink, a two burner induction cooktop flush mounted in a gorgeous butcher block counter. It photographed beautifully and functioned poorly. Open shelving in a tiny house that moves, collects grease, vibrates items to the edge during transportation, and requires everything on it to be both functional, and attractive simultaneously because there's nowhere to hide the things that aren't neither. I have a container of dish soap that has been annoying me for 2 years because it doesn't look right on the open shelf, and there's nowhere else to put it. The farmhouse sink is deep and beautiful and takes up twice the counter space of a smaller undermount sink that would have served my actual cooking habits just as well. You know, I cook for one person. The farmhouse sink is designed for a family that possesses volume of dishes I never generate. It is the largest surface in my kitchen. I use a quarter of it regularly. The induction cooktop is excellent as a cooking surface and terrible as a counter when nothing is in use because the glass ceramic surface makes marks easily, requires a specific cleaning protocol, and sits slightly proud of the butcher block in a way that catches crumbs along the conjunction. And 2 years of crumbs in that junction, 2 years. The kitchen I built now has closed cabinet doors on everything, a single undermount stainless sink sized to my actual use, and a propane two burner countertop with grates that can be removed and washed rather than a glass ceramic surface that requires a razor blade and a specific cleaning solution to maintain. Mistake number four, I didn't build in enough storage for tools and maintenance supplies. That's my mistake number four. I planned my storage around the things I knew I needed: clothes, kitchen equipment, bedding, books. I did not plan for the category of things a tiny house specifically requires: tools for maintenance and repair, spare parts for systems that will eventually need them, cleaning supplies that don't fit in a bathroom cabinet, seasonal items that need to go somewhere between seasons. And by the end of the first year, I had a growing collection of maintenance items with no designated home: a caulk gun, extra caulk, spray foam, wood screws in four sizes, a tube of roofing sealant, a set of wrenches for the propane fittings, spare fuses, extra wire connectors, a coil of 12 gauge wire, and the specific cleaning products that different surfaces in the house require. None of these were in the plan. All of them are necessary, though. The fix was a waterproof storage box, bolted to the tongue of the trailer, and an afterthought that works but looks like an afterthought. A properly planned exterior storage compartment or a dedicated tool cabinet built into the original design would have handled all of it more elegantly with less retrofitting. So if you're planning on, build at a dedicated maintenance storage allocation before you finalize your floor plan, not a drawer, a real space. 10 to 15 cubic feet minimum, for the tools and supplies that keep a tiny house running. You will fill it. You will be glad it exists too. Mistake number five, I waited too long to address the small problems. This is the mistake that costs the most money, and I made it repeatedly. A small gap in the window flashing, a seal around a roof penetration that looked borderline, a door threshold that didn't quite meet the floor the way it should. Each one looked minor, and each one got noted and deprioritized while I focused on bigger projects, and each one emitted water. Water in a tiny house doesn't behave the way it does in a large conventional home, where a small leak can go unaddressed for weeks before it becomes structurally significant in a tiny house. The affected area is proportionally much larger relative to the total structure. The wall cavities are thinner and more vulnerable, and the movement of the structure during transport works water into gaps and expands with every mile driven. A small leak in 1 year in the first year becomes a significant moisture problem in year two and structural damage in year three. The rule I now follow without expectation is any suspected moisture entry point gets addressed within 2 weeks of identification. Not eventually, not when I get around to it. Within 2 weeks, the cost of a tube of appropriate sealant applied prominently is never more than $15. The cost of the damage that sealant would have prevented can be measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars and weeks of repair work. Small problems in a tiny house are not small, they're small now and larger later. Treat them with the urgency the later version deserves, and you'll never have to deal with the later version. And here's what all five have in common. Every mistake on this list came from the same source: optimism applied to a technical decision that required realism. I optimized the loft for headroom in the main space rather than livability in the loft. I optimized the kitchen for aesthetic rather than function. I optimized the build timeline for by deprioritizing the small repair, and I optimize my installation spec around conventional guidelines rather than my actual exposure to conditions. The tiny house building community shares a lot of enthusiasm and not enough hard won skepticism. This video is the skepticism. Apply it before you build, and you'll make different mistakes than I did. Better ones, faster ones, cheaper ones, and you'll spend your years in the house enjoying it rather than working around the things you wish you'd done differently. Thanks for watching. Check out this video to the right. It might be able to help you on your tiny house off grid journey, and we'll check you on the next one.